Siwilika khona kaloku kwinkqubo yethu i-VOB Voice of the Bay kanti ngaleli thuba samkela yena umhlekazi Khoisan Martin onguye kaloku sisiquququ kwimicimbi ye-Khoisan apha kwilizwe loMzantsi Afrika. Good evening and welcome once again. Right now I'm hosting Mr. Khoisan Martin. He is not alone. He is with his fiancée. Her name is Lizelle. Mr. Martin, good evening and welcome to our show. That is the VOB Voice of the Bay. And greetings to you, my Lizelle.
Kaikos, Tata Percy. That is good evening.
Yes.
And kaikos to the listeners.
Kaikos.
Kaikos.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khoisan Martin. Mr. Khoisan Martin, we have been following some of your protests and some of your struggle, especially for the Khoisan community across the country. Would you please tell us about the challenges, especially post 1994? What are the challenges that you are facing as a Khoisan community post 1994? I understand there are a number of things, but there are those that are that need an urgent attention.
Yes, I would say, Tata Percy, the most pertinent ones would be the land. You see, what we are saying within the Khoisan community and amongst the chiefs is that a chief without land is like a rhino without a horn. You see, it's not normal for a rhino to be without a horn. Even a child can identify a cow from a rhino because of the horn. And therefore, I think those are one of our pertinent challenges that we do have. The other one I would say is that we must remember that the Khoi and San, as our former President Thabo Mbeki would put it, were almost extinct, almost to the brink of extinction in his beautiful poetic speech, I'm an African.
That was 1996.
1996, as you rightfully say. And if a person listened to that, you know, for the Khoisan, that acknowledgement of the former President Thabo Mbeki to say, I owe my being to the Khoi and the San, that in itself was the most greatest thing for us as Khoi. The other challenge that we have is the language barrier that we have. You must remember that if you truly want to kill, destroy, to get rid of a nation, Tata Percy, you kill the language. Because if you look at Africanism, if you look at, I have to go quickly back in our own history of this country, I'll speak about Steve Bantu Biko. You know, Steve Bantu Biko spoke about blackness, you know. So if you look about that, and then the language is so important within it. But what happened within South Africa, our historical past, the cruel historical past of this country, we sat where the colonialists want to get rid of the Khoi by getting the language out of their mouth. They must not speak the language. Do you know that some people, and through some research it was proven, that when the Khoi people way back, they were threatened, if you speak the language, we will even take a chisel and beat your front teeth out. That's why you would see many of our people don't understand why some of our people, it's not as they would call the passion gap and is this gap, when you see it's some of the youth that went on with that thing.
So that was done deliberately?
That was done deliberately because if you have to click Tatawam, you have to use your palate. You have to use your front palate, you know, against your front teeth.
Incisors.
Inshallah. So that is so important for the Khoi people, that because of the threats, the old Tatars would go into the field and speak the language there because of the threat. They would even warn the children that go, don't come and play around us.
If I may interrupt you, why your language was seen as a threat?
You see, Tata, what is important, language is culture. If I take away isiXhosa, I take away your full culture. Because when your young boy go for initiation in the bush, I don't see the English doing it in English or Afrikaans. I see him doing it in isiXhosa because of the deepness of the language. It's the same with the Khoi language. There's that depth, sometimes you know better when you sit next to a person that don't understand isiXhosa. Then somebody would say, let me say just for the sake of it, the program director would say something funny in isiXhosa. You laugh. I ask you, what did they say? You try to explain to me in English the depth that the person have related in isiXhosa, and then I would think, hi, but this was not funny. But it's because of the beauty and the depth of the language. You'll never be able to explain it. And it's the same when it comes with why we were not supposed to speak the language is supposed to kill a culture. Remember South Africa's history. The past of this country's history was about land. Land and resources. Colonialism is about resources. Colonialism, when you come into any country, you first kill the indigenous people. If you can't kill them, you take away their language, you take away their attire, because attire shows who you are. You know better. If you see one of the 12 tribes walking around Tatawan, you would say, hi, Ndebele, that one is that one is Amazulu. You understand? It's the same with the Khoi people.
Yesterday, in his speech, the president spoke a lot about the importance and the recognition of indigenous languages. How far are you in terms of recognition of your language?
You see, Tata Percy, recognition don't start with government. Recognition starts with the individual group which call themselves Khoi and San. We must try to speak our language even without government, because you can't recognize me as a Khoi or a San. I am, because it's my DNA. My language must be recognized by myself. I must say, Tita Gea, I am a Khoi. Tita Gea, Khoi. I am a Khoi. So if I speak my language in small ways with yourself, if I promote my own language by going to do my research in Western Cape, they have in the university, they are now teaching the kids, the learners, the students, the language. So we must find ourselves practicing, talking to each other the basics. How to say morning, how to say give me the cup, how to say drink something, the basic things, we must start with it. But to answer your question, I think that we felt grateful yesterday listening to the president, where he says no language should be superior than the other. And that we felt in the heart is that our president is serious when it comes to te terate, unity in diversity. Our strength lays in our diversity.
We will just pause for a minute because we will have to go for a commercial break. But there are a number of things that I would love you to explain to us, especially the recent program that you launched at the Better Stop. That program, it has to do about the renaissance, the reawakening of your culture. You will tell us more about that just after the commercial break.
Thanks, Tata Percy.
Let's go for a commercial break. Sibuyile kakhona sikwanamkela kwinkqubo yethu iVOB. Welcome once again to our show, that is our VOB Voice of the Bay. I'm still hosting the Khoisan activist, Mr. Khoisan Martin. Mr. Martin, welcome back once again. Just before we go for a commercial break, we spoke a lot about your language, the importance of your language and other challenges that are facing the Khoisan community. But now, recently, you met at the Better Stop. That's where you launched your cultural reawakening program, Who I Am. Tell us more.
Thank you, Tata Percy. You see, it is so important for us as the Khoisan people, when you make that statement, who am I? Then I need to answer in Khoi Kuvap to say that Tita Gea Khoi. It just means that I am a Khoi, because you asked the question, who am I? What we have done is because we thought that we need to go through our country actually, but starting in the metro, on that question, who am I? You see, there's a big challenge that we have when it comes to the country's laws. In 1950, the Population Registration Act was enacted. The Population Registration Act came up with the various populations within our country. They speak about the European as white people. They speak about the native as the African people. They even went as far as to speak about an alien, which is neither of the other two. But then they came up with one description. They called the Khoi and the San descendants, they called them coloureds. Now, if you look into the same Population Registration Act, they say, and this is the beauty that we need to understand clearly, why are we going on this program with Chief Kora, Chief Kayanip, and the other one is Chief of the Uswana. You see, we are saying that if the Population Registration Act says the following, that a white person is a person that is obviously white, and from Europe, I'm talking Act now of 1950. A native is a person from Africa. An alien is not within either and with outside our country. But then they came up with what is a coloured. They say a coloured is neither a white nor a native. Hey now, Tata, we are the first people of this country, actually the southern hemisphere of southern Africa. And yet these people give us a name.
You are the first.
We are the first. We are the first. Let me I'll come into the first type of story.
Yeah.
You see, what happened here is, first we have to settle this one. I'm a coloured. And a coloured means you neither white from Europe, you neither native from the whole of Africa. Nyan, from where am I? Because when Jan van Riebeeck came here on 6 April 1652 with Dromedaris, Reiger and all those ships,
They met you.
They met us. We were here. When the Ngunis came from the north, they met us. We were here. We accepted everybody just because Khoi means human being. So when the Khoi people see a person with 2 ears, 2 eyes, he can walk on 2 legs, he sees a human being and he accepts him immediately. If we really know our history, there was a time when Khoi and the Nguni people, especially the African people, lived together in this country. Where does the clique of the Khoisan people come from? It comes from the Khoi. During that time, we borrowed from each other. Where does the word Khoisan comes from? It comes from the Khoi people. Khoisan means angry people, for that matter. Because when the Khoisan came from the north with books and with spears, we want each other. Hey, Khoisan! We says we want each other. Angry people are coming down. So we were first here. You understand? But it's not something that we say in an ugly way that we were first here. You know, we even have a slogan within the Khoi people that says First Nation, but one nation. We include all nations. We are aware we can't do the one without the other. So for us, it's so important that we as a nation, unity in diversity must be lived through us when we say First Nation, but one nation. So therefore I would say, Tata Percy, is that as South Africans, we need to teach each other. We need to respect each other. Therefore it's so important that the government of the day must allow that Khoi Kuvap or Nama must be taught in our schools. We are grateful towards the government, yes, because last year in the Northern Cape, Nama was launched in the Northern Cape, grade 1 schools in the Northern Cape, with children as we speak. They are in grade 2 now, learning Nama. And that is the greatest moments for us. But we want to bring it in to the Eastern Cape.
Just before we conclude our conversation, I just want to know from you, what is your position as a Khoisan around the issue of Section 25 of the Constitution on land?
Tata, I think that we agree with government. Remember, my introduction on land was a chief without land is like a rhino without a horn. So when it comes to that Section 25, an expropriation without compensation, we are in full agreement. But we are also asking government, look after the Khoisan people. You know why? Just think for yourself, when we go into our cultural activities, Tata Percy, we don't use cows as cattle. It's not that we don't use it. We don't use domesticated animals. Yes, we had a lot of these animals in the past, but we concentrate on game, on wild animals. The Uswana people, they believe in the eland. Then you get other animals within ourselves. We eat springbok, the impala, the kudu. We want those animals. Therefore, we ask government, give us land, but more, give us game reserves, because we want to practice our culture properly by hunting and so forth. Yes, we believe, as I've said, we believe in domesticated animals, but so much more in game, as we call them, wild animals. Because until today, Tata Percy, you know how embarrassing it is for our chiefs, our paramount chief Gert Steenkamp, our paramount chief Human, you know, that they must go stand, our paramount chief Crawford Fraser, they must go stand like this for people who actually have this game reserve and ask for wild animals to be used.
We've got only 1 minute. Are you still calling for the Eastern Cape government to call the airport using the name of Chief Steenkamp?
Aye, Tata Percy, I like that question, and I'm so happy it's the last one on the card.
You've got only 4 seconds.
Yes, we want the airport of Port Elizabeth to be called Chief David Steerman International Airport. That is what the Khoi desire.
That's your position.
That is our position. That is what we desire, because remember, this is a province of legends. And the first 3 frontier wars was fought by the Khoisan people.
Let's leave it there. We will talk more and more next time.
Thank you,
when we meet again. Thank you very much for
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ukuthi uphela njalo udlwana ndlebelo yithi naye umhlakazi Khoisan Martin sabaleka singasevenkileni emveni kwevenkile umfundisi Diamond.